challenges of the world, and therefore the challenges of ourself. We are the greatest obstacle to achieving any kind of greatness. We get in our own way by not spending time in developing a deeper understanding of ourselves, of what it means to be me. And I think that this is where this book is so profound, because what Shlomo, what King Solomon is doing for us in these very short verses and trying to give us some kind of insight, is preparing us for a vision of where we can end up in the future. So tonight's class is I mean, it's very deep. So what I'm going to say tonight is going to sound very simple, maybe overly simple. I am often guilty of oversimplifying ideas, but if you think more deeply about what I'm saying tonight, it should change your life, because I know it has changed mine. So we left off at the middle of chapter 5 of Mishlei. We're in the middle. We're at pasuk. We're in the ninth pasuk, the ninth verse, and the verse begins with "Pen titen acharim." Let's start with number 8, because it's a continuation. He says, "Harchek me'aleh darchei." We spoke about the evil woman, the temptress that's trying to lure you in and get you to do all kinds of things that you don't want to do. The seduction. Distance your way from her, and don't draw near to her. Don't even go near her house. Pen titin lacharim hodecha usanecha lachzarai, lest you give others glory and your years to a cruel one. We'll explain what that is. Pen yisbuu zarim kochecha ve'atzvecha bebeit nachri, lest strangers be sated with your strength, and your labors be in the house of an alien. Nehamta ba'achritecha bekalot besarecha usharecha, and you will moan when the end comes, when your flesh and your body are consumed. V'amarta eich sanati musar tochachat no atzlibi, and you will say, how is it that I hated musar, how is it that I hated discipline, and my heart despised no atzlibi, my heart despised reproof. V'lo shamati b'kol morai, and I did not listen to the instruction of my masters, my teacher, lamti v'lo haytati aznai, and I did not lend my ear. How could I waste my time and not really take what all these people have been telling me for so long? How do I ignore them? Kimat hayiti b'chol ra. I was almost in all evil. B'toch kahal eda, in the midst of a congregation and an assembly. Shtei mayim miborecha. I drank water from your bore, your cisterns. V'nozli mitoch ba'arecha, and running water from your own spring. Yafutz mi'ayonotecha chutza berchavot palgei mayim. May your springs spread out, springs of water in the squares. Yuk lecha levadecha, you alone shall have them. Ve'ein lezarim itach, and strangers shall have nothing with you. Yimikorcha baruch, your fountains shall be blessed. Usmach me'eshet neurecha, and you shall rejoice with the wife of your youth. Ayelet ohavim ve'yalat chen. This is all very poetic. A lovely deer and a graceful yarvucha is a mountain goat. B'chol eight, at all times. Ba'avatecha tishke tamid, will satisfy you at all times, and you'll be intoxicated. Dadeha, through her bosoms, with love. Lama tiske b'ni bizarah. Why should you, my son, be intoxicated with a strange woman? Techabek chek nachria, and embrace the bosom of an alien one. Ki noach nochach einei Hashem darchei ish, for man's ways are the opposite of God's ways. B'chol ma'aglotea mefales, God reveals everything. All of his ways are, and his paths are revealed. Avanotav yilkeduno et rasha, and the sins shall trap the wicked man. B'chavle chatutai yitamech, and he will be hanged with the ropes of his sins. V'hu yamut be'ein musar barov ivlato yishke. He will die without discipline, and he will err with his exceeding foolishness. These are very harsh words from Shlomo Melech. Let's try to double click and see the what's it called? What he's the quote I read earlier, I believe, was the wise man sees that which is to come. Ezehu chacham haroeh et hanolad. The one who is wise sees that which will be born. Okay, so let's go back and try to understand this. So King Solomon, he's our best friend. And Shlomo HaMelech, he wants us to live a life of happiness. He wants us to live a life of greatness. So how do we get to a life of greatness? How do we get to a life of success? How do we do that? Everyone here wants to be happy. Everyone here wants to achieve some level of success. So how do we get there? So this is what he says. He says, number one, we're gonna go ahead and organize all of life into different categories. Okay, and the one category that's super important for Solomon, for Shlomo Melech, is the category of discipline. Okay, because without it, you have nothing. When I am looking for a shidduch, when I'm looking for a suitable marriage partner for my students, the first thing I ask anyone that I'm calling is, does this boy, is this girl committed to the things that she or he does? If you don't have commitment, you have nothing. Commitment is the muscle, for me at least. And if there's anyone here that has some other way, insight into understanding this, please by all means share. But as far as I understand it, commitment is the most important midah, character trait, when finding a person. Why? Because if I know the person's committed, they're going to stick through the hard times. I know someone's committed, they're going to spend the effort in trying to understand how to make this other person happy. If someone's committed, they're going to work hard to overcome whatever the challenges are. Commitment is that most important midah, that muscle that's necessary for success in every area of life, whether in business, whether in marriage, whether with children, family, community. The people that succeed are the people that are committed. That's pashut. I think we could all agree on that. But there's something so complicated over here, is that we are often distracted by the things that feel really good and very easy, right? It's so easy just to sit there. We know that we shouldn't be having that chocolate, but it's just so good. How can I say no to chocolate cake? Right? It's so easy to lend it, it calls my name, it asks me to come out. So Shlomo Melech is saying like this: there is something unique about our youth, that so much of who we are, what we do, comes from there. What we saw in our homes, our upbringing, the environment, the communities that we were in, they help shape so much of who we are, for better and for worse. Now, I say that because unfortunately it's true. Some of us have had very positive upbringings, and we've taken those positive things that we receive from our parents, our grandparents, and we use that in all the areas of our lives, and we've benefited from it. And unfortunately, some of us have also inherited some really bad things from our parents and our grandparents. And while we love them for who they were, because, like us, they're human, and like us, we make mistakes and they've made mistakes. I think it's one of the most adult thing you can start to do, is recognize that your parents were just people and not parents, and that they made mistakes just like we're going to make mistakes. And I think that, part of what Shlomo Melech is telling us over here is that there is a superpower we have when we're kids. It's called idealism. You're filled with imagination. You're filled with potential, and there's all these amazing opportunities. You want to go out and try everything. And what ends up happening is, as we grow older, we kind of like become more skeptical about everything. We think we have a better understanding of the world. We think that we already know the outcome of those things. And therefore, we're not willing to take risks anymore. We're willing to do less. We're not willing to explore as much, because we've created a vision of what the world is like. And we're sometimes, all too often, we get stuck in that vision. And this is what separates adulthood from youth, is that there's a naivete that comes with youth, and there's something beautiful about it. There's something beautiful about that in the beginning of a marriage. There's that, and that's exactly what he's saying over here. He's saying how don't allow yourself to be tempted by pleasure, right? Don't allow yourself to lose yourself to the pain of to the pain of temptation, because all that's going to end up happening is that if you let go of discipline, you're going to look back at all of the things that you could have, should have accomplished, and be filled with regret. And who here wants to be filled with regret? I don't want to have regrets. So how do? We do this all the time. We do this. We know what we should be doing. We know what we ought to be doing, and somehow we're stuck in a loop and we can't pull ourselves out of it. So he's saying like this: wake up, my friends. Okay, there comes a time. There's a reckoning, and I think that these psukim, we want to go back at them, look at chapter 5, go from verse 10 until the end, until 23, and look at these psukim very carefully. What Shlomo Melech is saying is like this: number one is there's something called time, and unfortunately, it's not forever. It's a short window of time that we have, and during this time, we have the ability of changing and um, reshaping who we could be, what we should be. Now, having said that, the obstacle is us. We're the obstacle. When I hear from my young students, oh, my dad never loved me. My mom, she was too busy taking care of my dad. And I hear all these excuses. I say, nonsense. Now you're an adult. Take responsibility for yourself. I don't want to hear about your parents. I don't want to hear about all the challenges they created. We all had challenging parents. Okay. We all had our hardships. We'll play the violin. I'll play it for them a little bit. We'll let them feel bad, let them wipe away the tears. But Lamase, end of the day, you got to take responsibility for yourself. And we all understand this. This is true for the youth. This is true for the adults. Okay. He's saying like this: number one, you are not stuck in your circumstances. That means that right now, every single person listening or watching, wherever you are, you have a power of transforming your reality. You are not defined by the current circumstances that you are in right now. The circumstances are uniquely yours. They're there for a reason. But Lamase, end of the day, you have the power over overcoming your circumstances. The circumstances are the challenge that you need in order to grow. And you'll look back at these challenges and you'll be like, you'll say to yourselves, oh my gosh, like I can't believe I didn't rise to the occasion and overcome the challenge. I'll give you an example. This is Maaseh Shahaya. I have a family member who has very, very hot tempered. We all have family. Everyone has a family member who's a little bit charif, right? A little spicy. And, he's super intelligent, very bright, very well educated. But, he never really spent time in thinking about his own midot. So he may be able to recite all of William Shakespeare's works by heart. He could go through all of Spinoza's works and explain to you the nuances of philosophy, all kinds of philosophy. But try to have a conversation with him where he doesn't become explosive. It's very uncomfortable talking to the person, right? And here's a person who's so brilliant but unrefined. And this is what separates Judaism from every other discipline. You see, it's not just about having intelligence. It's not enough to be an intelligent person. It's not enough to be worldly. It's not enough to have your PhD in Judaism. Those things are nice. But you know what's more valuable than having all the intelligence in the world? It's having good midot. It's understanding that you have something. At the very least, you have a responsibility to humanity. You have a responsibility to care about the people around you. You have a chiyuv, an obligation to be loving and patient, and understanding. God could excuse someone for not being Shomer Shabbat. They didn't know. They didn't learn Torah. They didn't have it. Okay, it's fine. We didn't know. They didn't know. But what's the excuse for not caring about people? At the very animals care for each other. Animals have a deep innate understanding. They have a responsibility for their kind. We're going to be less than that. The one thing, and this is true for everybody, for all kind, I have a very wide, colorful family. Some, religious. I'm as religious as it gets, and then everything else is moving to the left. And the one common denominator for me is it doesn't matter about their religiosity and their practice as much as it, to me, what matters primary is what are their midot like. If you have bad midot, I'd rather you not be observant. Stay away. We don't want you. I don't want you to wear your kippah. I don't want you to represent me. And this is what Shlomo is saying. He's saying, listen, my friends, we have to remember that there is something unique about the inspiration we have in our youth that allows us to fight and become something bigger and more. We have a passion, we have this deep drive to want to accomplish, and then somehow we just like, we're okay, I am who I am. It's nonsense. It's shtiyot. And I'll give you an example of this. This is a brilliant example. There was the Chavetz Chaim was on a train. I've said the story once before. You may have heard it, but I think it's appropriate to share it again over here. He's on a train, and he's going from Poland to some other part of Europe, and it was like a multi-destinational train. And you'd stop in different places, and different parts of his route, the seat, the quality of his ticket would change. So he's switching carts. He's going from a first class ticket to a second class ticket. And he's there with his students. And as he's switching carts, he is moving between the two carts, and his foot gets stuck in between these two carts. And he can't pull his foot out. And his students are trying to help him. And as he finally pries his foot out from these two carts, his shoe falls off. He quickly bends down, takes off his other shoe, and throws it towards his other shoe. And the students are looking at him like, Rabbi, what are you doing? Why are you throwing your other shoe? So listen to what he says. He says, someone's going to find that one shoe. And it's useless to them. And my one shoe is useless to me. I'd rather someone find a pair and walk away saying, God hooked me up. I found a pair of shoes. You know, it was instantaneous for the guy. How do you become that? How do you become a person that's so aware and in tune with the needs, the wants of others? What's the distraction? Laziness. What's the distraction? I'm enjoying wherever I am right now. You know, I've often heard this from some people, my friends who are maybe a little bit older than me, and say, I am who I am. Take it or leave it. It's nonsense. That's your Yetzer Hara speaking. You know, greatness comes from never being satiated with where you are. Being happy with what you have is okay. But when it comes to your development, your growth, that's forever. It never should end, right? And that's the bracha he gives over here. He says it straight out. He says that, how does he put it? It's so poetic. He says, where's that pasuk? He says, Yeh mekorcha baruch. Your source should be blessed. Usmach me'eshet nu'urecha, which is kind of sad. It's like this beautiful poetic thing that you should be rejoiceful with the youth of your wife, right? There's not something powerful and profound about being in love. Young love is so beautiful and innocent, right? But in it, he's saying, look, as you get older, you lose that. But remember, you could enjoy the youth of the love of your youth. Thanks a lot, Shlomo Melech. I have a lot to look forward to, but it's nonsense. You see, we do lose things. We do lose excitement. We do lose those sensitivities. We lose those things, but that doesn't mean that you can't have them right now. I'll never forget, the first time I prayed on Yom Kippur was when I was 19 years old. Okay, my first Yom Kippur service was when I was 19. And I vividly remember feeling like I was sitting in God's courtroom, flying with the angels. It was the most profound experience I've ever had. And I remember those holidays was amazing. It was just like, they totally changed my life. So the next Yom Kippur, I was expecting to have even a more profound experience. And I want you to know, it was the worst Yom Kippur of my life. I had a headache. I couldn't concentrate. I couldn't focus. It was the worst possible experience I could go through. And I couldn't understand it. And I was so depressed. I walked away feeling horrible, like this. I don't want to do this. So I went to one of my rabbis and I said, Rabbi, I don't understand this. My first year was so amazing. I just had this crazy experience. I connected to God in the most profound way. And now I got nothing. I feel nothing. It's empty. So listen to what he said to me. This is the secret to all of life. Your first experience is free. If you want it to become meaningful, you have to take ownership over it. It's kind of like, if you ever watched a baby learning to walk, all the dads here know exactly what I'm talking about. You take your kid by his hands and you help him with his first steps. and they're sitting there with this huge smile plastered on their face, and they're so excited. And and then you let go, and they get scared for a minute, and then they start walking, and they fall, and they cry, but then you're there to pick them up again. And when you're holding them in your hands and you're walking with them, they walk around with such pride, like, oh, I'm walking, but in reality, you're holding them. When we go through our own spiritual experiences in life, that's literally God holding us, teaching us how to walk. But if I was to ask you, what's the goal of a father, mother to their child? What's the ultimate goal? Okay, I think you all agree that the ultimate goal for a parent is to create children that are independent, children that can survive on their own without their parents. That's the goal of parenting, I think. And therefore, it's my job, it's our job to raise children that are able to, give their kids the ability to stand on their own 2 feet. That is what it means to be a parent. If I always have to hold your hand and I'm always the one that's literally pulling you, I failed you. So what does God do? God's got to take 3 steps back. And he reaches out waiting for you to take your own first steps for yourselves. That is that's that's life. When you are feeling stuck, where you feel like the emotions don't click, where you are feeling disconnected, that is the opportunity for growth. That is where you're being challenged. That is how you connect to the love of your youth. It was free in the beginning to show you what it can be like, to show you how intoxicating it could be. That's God holding your hands. That's a freebie. But if you wanted to go ahead and have real meaning and depth where it's your own accomplishment, not God holding you, not me propping you up, you gotta take ownership over it. You gotta own it. You gotta own the suffering. You gotta own the pain. You gotta work through those challenges and become something more. That is what he is saying over here. He says, Yimakorcha Baruch, your source shall be blessed, and you will rejoice with it. Right? Rashi says that's the wife of the wife of your youth, who will remain dear and beloved. That is that place we want to get to. Ayad ovim v'yad chen. A beloved deer inspired. A deer is always beloved to its male. A hind is a male deer. It's male partner. The endearment always remains strong. That's the relationship I want with God. It's the relationship I want with my wife, who I love so dearly. It's the relationship I want with my children. But my friends, if we want to have great relationships with God the Almighty, we want to have great relationships with our spouse, our children, you got to work at it. There is nothing that comes easy in this world. We create this false perception that, okay, it's on autopilot. If it's on autopilot, it's not working properly. Every relationship that we have, including the ones with our own selves, requires maintenance daily. Every single day, we have to be willing to invest in ourselves. Don't allow yourself to settle for counterfeit pleasures. Don't allow yourself to be intoxicated by this false love. That's one thing he says. The other extreme is don't allow yourself to lose yourself to love also. There's an idea of creating a balance between you and your relationship with your spouse. That if all you're doing is talking to her, all you're doing is connecting, and there's no space in that relationship, that's also a bad thing. You have to find that balance where you can go ahead and be in love, to be engrossed in that relationship, but not to be lost in that relationship. There's a difference. And therefore, it is your responsibility to find that balance, right? So, how do you do that? Okay. You got to rejoice in your youth, rejoice in remember the inspiration you had as a child. Don't allow yourself to buy into these false notions of adulthood that you understand, that it's clear to you. Don't be afraid to try new things, and don't be afraid to admit when you made mistakes. Right? It's okay to make mistakes. We all make mistakes in life. Shlomo says it. It's the foolishness. We're all fools. We make mistakes. But again, mistakes don't define us. Where you're going defines who you are. Where you are right now and where you want to be tomorrow defines who you are. The Yetzer Hara creates this. He wants to, how he gets you? He doesn't get you by sinning. The Yetzer Hara does not get you to do a sin. He doesn't care about your sins. You know what he cares about? He cares about how you think about yourself. If he can control how you think, he's won. It's over, right? If the Satan gets into your mind and tells you how to think about yourself, game over. I am this. That is the worst kind of thinking you could possibly have. I can be anything I put my mind to, and I should never stop. All the dreams you've had as in your youth can always be materialized at any point of your life. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. And if you have that thought that says, "Oh, the rabbi, he's so young," he's so, he's way too wishful thinking. You are where you are, and you're old, and it's nonsense. Okay, it doesn't matter to me who you are, where you are, what the circumstances are. What matters most is where you want to be. In Judaism, we don't measure success by where you have arrived. It doesn't matter what your status is. In Judaism, we measure success by your effort. We measure success by your drive. We measure success by how many times you failed and got up again. That's greatness. Greatness is not having the mansion, driving the nice car, having perfect family. It's nonsense. Greatness is fighting to have those things. Greatness is working hard to maintain and establish those kinds of relationships. Whether or not it happens, I can't help it. Someone told me a couple of weeks, I have a friend who says to me, I can't how do I make my wife happy? I try all the time to make her happy. I can't make her happy. I'm like, it's not your job to make her happy. It's her job to make her happy. Your job is to do everything you can to create an environment where she will be happy. But ultimately, it's her choice. It's her choice. And it's also our choice. Do you want to be happy? Do you want to be great? Are you willing to go ahead and push beyond the circumstances? Are you willing to accept that the way in which you see the world is somewhat limited, and in reality, you are limitless? This is what Shlomo Melech is saying over here. He's saying, my son, should you err with a strange woman and embrace an alien bosom, right? Are you willing to go ahead and connect yourself to a false idea, right? For man's ways are opposite Hashem's eyes. What is he saying over there? We measure, success is success, right? I can measure it very simply. What kind of degrees you have, how much money you made, how many vacations you go on, how much stocks you have, that's success. That's not true. It says clearly, this world is an olam b'shikra. It's a world of lies. We have to at some point buy into this idea that I am not my body, that the world around me is not permanent. There's something, a very small, this is a small part of our existence. Just like birth is an aspect of death. What do I mean? When a woman is carrying her children, when she's carrying a baby and that baby is born, that baby dies from that reality. The womb is perfect. It's warm. The baby's got all its nutrients. It has eyes, but does not see. It has lungs, but does not breathe, right? It has a mouth that does not work. It's got a whole entire digestive system that's not working the way it should be working. And all of a sudden, in one day, there's a bright light, there's a small little tunnel, and boom, baby comes into the world. That previous existence that it was in, it died in. Birth is always death into another world, or rebirth into another world. And after 120, when we leave this world, it's also the same thing. We are buried and we're put into another reality. We are born into a new reality. Okay? And the pain that we feel, there's no fire waiting for you guys in Gehenom. We don't believe in that stuff. The pain that we feel is the pain of regret, right? That is the pain that we feel in this world. We feel the pain that we have in Olam Ha'emet, the world of truth, is I can't believe I spent all my time worrying about these stupid things when I could have been doing all the things I should have been doing. Why did I give up? Why didn't I try harder? Why did I waste my time? Why didn't I invest more in the things that mattered the most? Why didn't I take my dreams of my youth seriously? Shlomo HaMelech is saying, wake up, my friends, right? The iniquities of the wicked one will trap him, and he will be suspended in the cords of his sins. What are those sins? Those sins are the belief that you are stuck and that things don't change, that things will always remain the same. That's a lie. That's a lie. Things do change. They're constantly changing. The most successful people that I know are the ones that are always preparing for change. Those are the people that are never stuck in the same place that they are in. They're always looking for ways to grow. And it's okay to have a bad year. It's okay to have a bad few years. It's okay to have a decade that's bad, even. They say that we're in the month of Shvat, right? And the month of Shvat we know is Tu B'Shvat, and Tu B'Shvat is the Rosh Chodesh HaIlanot. It's the Rosh Hashanah of the trees. And we say, Ki Adam etz pri hasadeh, man is like the tree of the field. What is the relationship between man and trees? What is the relation between trees and humanity? Um, I was at for Rosh Chodesh Shvat, I went to a botanical garden. I'm like, you know what? It's Rosh Chodesh. I want to go to see the trees. I want to spend the day in the gardens. So I did this. And I see this Hasidic guy there with his wife. And he started schmoozing a little bit. He's like, "Why are you here?" I'm like, "I'm here for Rosh Chodesh." He's like, "Really? Why?" I'm like, "Because it's Shvat." Really, why? And he's like, "Well, what's the relationship between being here and Rosh Chodesh?" I'm like, "Well, Rosh Chodesh Ha'ilanot. It's the Rosh Chodesh of the trees coming up in a couple of weeks." He's like, So I said to him, you know what trees teach us? Trees teach us the most profound thing in the world, and we don't really connect to it because we're so far removed from it. I don't know where you guys are. I live in New York, and Brooklyn I grew up in a part of Brooklyn where they had no trees. There was one tree on my block growing up, and they cut it down. And I remember in first grade when I had to do that project, we had to bring in the leaves for the fall. I went to my teacher, I'm like, there are no leaves on my block. I said to them, in a world of in an agricultural world, the trees reminded us that just like trees have seasons, people have seasons. Just like there are times in the year where the trees are filled with leaves and they're blooming and budding and they're gorgeous and they're exercising their full potential. Same is true with human beings. There are times in our lives where we are flying and we are expressing the best version of ourselves. And there are times like in the winter where it's all gone, all the leaves are gone. And it's okay. It's okay because life moves on. And I don't allow the circumstances that I'm in to define my reality because I know tomorrow will be better. That's what the trees remind me of. The trees remind me that just like they have seasons, we have seasons. And just like right now, we're all going through our lockdown and pandemics and we're stuck and we're frustrated and we feel like we're fraying at the edges. Hold on, my friends, because this season is coming to an end. And my prayer is that we transition to one of more potential, of more greatness. And this is how he he ends over here, because Shlomo Melech is very sobering. He says the iniquities of the wicked will trap him, and he will be suspended with the cords of his sins, and he will die for refusing discipline and for the abundant foolishness with which he erred. Right? I don't know how to spin that and make you feel good about it because it makes me feel really bad. But I think we could end like that. At the end of the day, is that the people that are able to live a life of discipline and greatness are the people that are going to find happiness, the people that are going to find true happiness. Let's define it right now. Okay. What is happiness? How do we define simcha? What is it? Ready? This is a non conventional answer, but I hope you'll appreciate it and respect it. What I understand is like this: simcha is doing what you were meant to be doing. Simcha is knowing that you're doing exactly what you should be doing. That is happiness. Real happiness is not the pursuit of happiness. That's not happiness. The American dream, that's not happiness. That's pleasure. They're really talking about pleasure. You know what real happiness is? Is knowing that I am involved in doing everything that I should be doing right now. That is happiness. Think about it for a moment. You are happiest knowing you are doing your responsibilities. You know that you're crossing off your list. You're getting things done. You're moving forward. You're accomplishing. You're building. You're caring for the people around you. That is where real simcha happens. Everything else, distraction. So he's saying over here, he's saying that, people that refuse discipline, the people that refuse to go ahead and really build themselves up, right? He says, um, "Hu yamut be'en musar." You person will die without musar, without that discipline. That person, right, will die with a tremendous amount of foolishness. He'll be laughed at. You can't have happiness when you're investing in counterfeit pleasure. You can't have real pleasure. You can't have real simcha when you're doing the things you shouldn't be doing. And everybody knows what they should be doing. And I'll prove it to you. Every single person listening, watching, has a vision, a picture in their mind's eye of who they should be. I don't care who you are. I don't care if you don't even know it. If you spend a little bit of time, you'll figure it out. Every single person has a vision in their mind's eye of what they could be, should be doing. And if you are doing that and living that, that, my friends, is where simcha comes from. Not just resting on your laurels and being who you are. It's by pushing yourself and actualizing that vision of who you are. That is where greatness comes from. Bezrat Hashem, next week we will continue. We'll get into chapter 6. We're going to talk over there about, overcommitting ourselves to things and the foolishness of not realizing our own potential or overestimating our potential. May God bless us with the clarity, the ability of reveling in the youthfulness of love, the intoxication of those relationships. May we recognize that we are not defined by our current circumstances, that just like the trees have seasons, we have seasons, and that the hardships eventually will float away. And all we need to do is exactly what we were meant to be doing, becoming the best version of ourselves. Have an amazing week. Shavua Tov, and we'll, Bezrat Hashem, catch up next week. Kol Tov, everybody. Thank you so much for
Thank you,
listening.
Rabbi.
Thank you,
Thank you,
everybody. Thank you so much for
Rabbi.
coming. Thank you for
Bye.
listening.